Yes, Ben.
Um, with the restoration of the sanctions waiver on Iran, which is akin to lifting sanctions in the sense that it enriches them to a certain degree.
No, it does not, Ben.
But
that's not true. It does not do that.
Well, was the restoration of the sanctions waiver in any way an incentive to get them back to the table and continue negotiations?
So to be very clear, what you said was not true. The issuance of the so-called IFCA waiver in no way enriches Iran. This is about two things. This is about nuclear non-proliferation and nuclear safety. I would suspect most reasonable observers would agree that both of these things are in our vital national interest, regardless of what happens with the JCPOA. If we're able to achieve a mutual return to compliance with the JCPOA, or if we're not. We decided to renew and to restore this sanctions waiver to do one thing, and that is to enable third-party participation in nuclear non-proliferation and safety projects in Iran, owing to the growing proliferation concerns we have, in particular with respect to the increasing stockpiles of enriched uranium in Iran, the stockpiles that have grown following the last administration's decision to abandon the JCPOA. Absent this waiver, the sort of detailed technical discussions with third parties regarding the disposition of stockpiles and other activities of non-proliferation value, they couldn't take place. The Trump administration, as you know, provided a similar waiver for years, even after its foolish decision to leave the JCPOA, precisely because the last administration recognized the non-proliferation value of these waivers. I don't know that I've quoted Secretary Pompeo before from here, but Secretary Pompeo said about this waiver, quote, "This decision will help reduce proliferation risks." So additionally, the technical discussions facilitated by the waiver are necessary in the final weeks of JCPOA talks, as the waiver itself would be essential if we were in a position to if Iran were to resume compliance with its nuclear commitments. But again, even if talks do not culminate in a mutual return to compliance, these sorts of technical discussions could still contribute to our non-proliferation goals. Non-proliferation, nuclear safety, these things may not mean a lot to a whole lot of people. So just to give you a few examples of activities that this waiver would cover. For example, the modernization of the Iraq reactor based on the design approved by the JCPOA. The conversion of the reactor to a much less proliferation-sensitive design. This waiver would approve the preparation and modification of the Fordow facility for stable isotope production. It would remove a potential impediment to efforts to end uranium enrichment at Fordow, as Iran committed to do under the JCPOA. It would facilitate the transfer outside of Iran of enriched uranium to result in a reduction in Iran's stockpile to no more than 300 kilograms of up to 3.67% enriched LEU. I could go on, but the point is that this waiver is not about providing Iran with funds. This waiver is about what is manifestly in our non-proliferation interests, in service of non-proliferation safety to the United States, to our partners and allies around the world.
Can you talk about the timing of it, though, and why the decision was taken on Friday?
Well,
if it had anything to do with...
Well, the fact is, if we are in a position to resume compliance with the JCPOA, this waiver will need to be in place in order to affect some of the steps to make Iran's nuclear program less dangerous. If we are not in a position to achieve a mutual return to compliance, these steps are still in our interest.
What makes you think that next step, that we're one step closer to rejoining the JCPOA?
I didn't say that we were. I'm saying that this prepares us in the event we are able to achieve a mutual return to compliance with the JCPOA. This could still very much go one of two ways. A mutual return to compliance if Iran is in a position and willing and able to make the sort of political commitments necessary, or the alternatives that we've talked about in some less detail, but that we still talked about.
Ben, Are you, that long list of things that you said that these waivers give, you're saying that there's no benefit to Iran in any of that?
I am saying that the net benefit of this is a non-proliferation benefit for us.
Iran gets nothing out of it?
When you say sanctions
I'm not
waiver,
talking about, hold on a second.
Matt, you don't need to raise your voice.
You guys are the ones who said you were restoring the waivers, right? Okay? So, if Iran really gets no benefit at all out of this, then, why even bother?
Why bother? I just explained to Ben because
tell me why Iran doesn't benefit from this.
Matt, this is something that
You're assuming that everyone thinks that sanctions relief equals dollars.
Well, that was the question. The question was
Iran.
you just
no.
It was.
That wasn't really the question.
Was.
That was the way you interpreted the question.
You can refer to the
sanctions
transcripts.
relief does not necessarily mean only dollar bills flying across the table into the Iranian treasury's coffers, does it? Or is
in this case, it will allow Iran to undertake nuclear non-proliferation and safety activities that would otherwise be
to
prescribed.
Iran that it was not getting before.
The fact is, Matt, that what is in our non-proliferation interest can also be in some ways in Iran's interest. That doesn't change the fact that it is manifestly in our interest.
Do they get a benefit?
Matt, I was referring to.
Do they get any benefit out of this or not?
It is some of these steps were down to their interest.
Do they get any benefit or not?
This is in our interest to do, which is precisely
Is it
why
in Iran's interest as well?
last administration did it. In 2018, Secretary Pompeo, as I quoted before, said precisely, this decision will help reduce proliferation risks.
2 years later, when he rescinded the waivers, he said that he accused Iran of participating in nuclear blackmail, and said that they weren't deserving of the benefits that accrue to them under this. You're stuck on this idea that, and interesting that you use the word enrich, because I think you're talking about it in terms of money, but enrichment obviously has a different kind of meaning when it comes to Iran. But I don't understand how you can say that Iran gets no benefit and that this isn't some kind of sanctions relief that the administration has offered to Iran before it has made any of its own concessions.
Matt, the question I was responding to took this.
Okay, well then forget about the question you think you were responding to. Answer my question. Does Iran benefit at all from the waivers that were signed?
You will need to ask the Iranian government whether they think this is a benefit to them.
Well, who do you think this benefits?
We
Just
know
you?
this is a benefit to us. The ability of third-party entities to work on nuclear non-proliferation projects and nuclear safety projects in Iran, in the face of our growing concerns, non-proliferation and nuclear safety concerns, that is in our benefit. Yes.
The people that this benefits, in fact, are actually Russian, Chinese, European companies, right? Is that what you're saying?
Matt, I'm saying that it is manifestly to our advantage.
And not Iran's.
It benefits us to be able to address nuclear safety and nuclear non-proliferation concerns.
If you're able to argue that Iran gets no benefit out of this successfully, which you haven't convinced me of, but anyway, but if you're able to, then good on you. Now, do you think that these waivers trigger INARA?
Matt, we have a robust conversation with Congress on progress in Vienna. We, have briefed Congress regularly on the discussions. I have every expectations that those briefings will continue in the days and weeks ahead.
Well, do you believe that this triggers the requirements of the Iran Nuclear Review Act?
What I can say is that we've had conversations with Congress about requirements should we be in a position to resume compliance with the JCPOA, but I don't have anything for you on these particular this IFCA waiver.
No, not IFCA, INARA.
Right, but you're saying these in response to IFCA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so you're aware of the requirements of INARA, right? So any agreement reached with Iran has to be submitted. Are you saying that it did trigger INARA, and your notification to Congress on Friday fulfills the requirements of INARA?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying.
Oh, well, then why did you even notify Congress in the first place?
We regularly notify Congress when
Okay,
it
well,
comes to.
So did it trigger INARA or not?
Matt, we will carefully consider the facts and circumstances when it comes to any potential U.S. return to the JCPOA to determine the implications under INARA.
So you don't think that this falls under the scope of INARA?
I have no reason to believe that this was done pursuant to INARA. This is something we, as I said before, we regularly engage with Congress when it comes to developments in Vienna.
All right, well, it's a technical issue. I get that, and it's probably boring the hell out of everybody. But it is an important one because even if the notification wasn't done under INARA, do you think that the waivers trigger the INARA requirements for any agreement with Iran related to its nuclear program? These do relate to its nuclear program,
This
right?
is, as you said, a technical question, so we'll get you a technical answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, why shouldn't Iran benefit? Why shouldn't Iran benefit from the waiver? I mean, I thought the whole purpose of negotiations is so everybody goes back to the deal, and sanctions will be lifted. Iran will pull back from any nuclear threat and so on, and everything will be hunky dory. So why is that such a bad thing if Iran benefits?
You'll have to ask.
No, I'm asking you because you
Matt,
don't know.
I am not speaking to what Iran
Yeah,
may be saying about this. I am speaking to the
But
benefits accrue.
Isn't that the incentive for Iran to go on, in good faith in these negotiations?
Well,
and so on?
the basic formula of the JCPOA, leaving aside, Matt's questioning about these specific measures, is in fact permanent, verifiable limits on Iran's nuclear program in return for sanctions relief.
Do you have any indication as the talks resume tomorrow that the Iranian negotiators are coming back empowered by the political decision you were expecting?
We will have a better idea of that once the talks resume. Definitely.
Wendy Sherman will be in Vienna for an OSCE meeting tomorrow. Will she meet with the U.S.-Iran team at any of the P5+1 or even the Iranians?
She's taking part virtually.
Okay, thanks.